What's up, Exeters? Today we're here in Edinburgh, Scotland to bring you a video, obviously. But Renee's gonna tell you what video, because I can't remember two guys' names. I know it's two guys.
We're here to tell you the infamous tale of Burke and Hare.
I was gonna say Bert and Ernie. I knew that wasn't right there. All right, join us on this adventure.
So who were Burke and Hare?
They were grave robbers.
Not necessarily. People seem to think they were grave robbers, but really, they murdered people.
I stand by what I said.
So, the both of them shared a common first name. Both were named William. But that wasn't the only similarity they had. Both were kind of, I guess you could say, like money hungry and willing to do some really sketchy stuff to get said money. So both came from Ireland, moved here to Scotland. Burke actually left his wife and children, just abandoned them.
Deuces, guys, I'm out.
Shacked up with a mistress.
Going to another country.
Her name was Helen. And Hare had a woman he lived with by the name of Margaret, that they were not, legally husband and wife, but I guess like common law marriage type thing where they claim to be husband and wife. And they owned a place for people to stay, like a bed and breakfast type thing probably. And we're gonna show you the location of where some of these murders took place in this bed and breakfast. So we just turned on Lady Lawson Street, and before we get to the actual location of where the lodging used to be, I'm gonna give you a little background. Back in the early 1800s, they got their bodies for dissection and stuff from those who were put to death by, their penalty for crimes. And in 1823, the Judgment of Death Act basically did away with a lot of the crimes punishable by death. So that kind of, was a problem for all the doctors wanting to dissect people for science. So that's when you saw an explosion of grave robbery happen and people wanting to dig up, people and sell their bodies because they made big money doing that. There was so much grave robbing going on at the time that a lot of families, when they would have someone deceased, they would have people watch over the graves. They would have these towers that would watch over the graves because the fresher the body,
more money.
Yes.
I can see that. You don't want one that's starting to look like a zombie.
No.
Holes all in his head, skin falling off.
So we're here at Argyle House, and this is a private, I think it's a residential building now, but the address for here is 3 Lady Lawson Street. Now, back in the early 1800s, this was Tanner's Close Lodging House, which was where Hare and Margaret had their lodging. This would have been where the first victim died. Well, we can't necessarily call him a victim because He was an elderly gentleman that was staying here. He owed 4 pounds to Hare, but he died of natural causes. So Hare, being like, oh, you owe me money, got Burke involved, and they took this man's body and sold it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, picture.
Okay, so after successfully selling the body of the elderly man that died in the lodging house, they got the bright idea to basically start finding other people that maybe wouldn't be missed by friends or family. So this was a street that was travelers would come to find cheap housing. A lot of people drunk, you know, it was overflowing with alcohol, which I can still kind of smell today, because one street we passed reeked of vomit. Took me back to New Orleans for a second.
Yep.
And this had like buildings that were falling apart, poverty. So in essence, you can picture these may have been homeless people or people that they could get away with boozing up and taking back to Hare's Lodge, which is what they would do. All right, so the area we're in right now is called Grass Market. Today, this is kind of a bustling little area with all kinds of restaurants and loads of people. But back then, it was another frequent place where Burke and Hare would meet potential victims, get them drunk, take them back to the lodging, do their dirty deeds. So one place we're going to show you in particular is the White Hart Inn. This is a known location to where they would find their victims. So you can see like all the people here and the shops that kind of line this square. Definitely would be hard to find a victim nowadays. So now that we've shown you the 2 locations they would have found potential people to bring back to the lodge, we're going to show you the path they would have taken their victims to sell the body. This is the street behind me we were at earlier. So across the street from me right now, we have high school. I don't really know how they say that. It's W-Y-N-D. I don't really know how you would say that, but
Wind.
So we're going to take you up that way to where they would have sold the victims.
The area we're looking for is actually up in this gate. But as you can see, we can't get in there.
So this is where they would have taken the bodies to a Dr. Knox. That is originally who bought the first guy that just died of natural causes at the lodging. And at that point, he was like, hey, if you guys come across any other bodies, I'll buy them from you. And so that is who they took all of their murder victims to. Okay, so if you'll recall earlier, I told you that The first body they sold was an elderly guy that owed them £4. But when they took his body, Dr. Knox actually paid them £7, 10 shillings.
So they got a little bonus. Must have been a good body.
It was fresh. It's a fresh body.
Fresh body.
So their preferred method to keep people out was to restrain them and suffocate them. And this...
Well, it does keep from bruising and tearing up the
Right,
body.
exactly. So this form of murder became known as burking.
What'd your dad have named after him? Murder technique.
This is actually where Burke's brother once lived. And this is where they also took care of one of their victims. And the person that died here would have been a prostitute by the name of Mary Patterson. Wonder if this little bakery knows that such a heinous act took place while they're in there baking their cupcakes. Just churning
Never
along.
mind the noise upstairs.
Just churning along
Just gonna
my
keep-
little cupcakes, and don't mind that little blood splatter right there that stained the floor. So not everybody that Burke and Hare got in their grasp or their clutches ended up dying. So we just showed you the location where Mary Patterson was killed. Well, she had a friend that was with her by the name of Janet. She had actually excused herself early in the night and then returned after they had done killed Mary. And she was told that Mary and Burke had stepped out. So she waited a while for her. Of course, she never came back because she was lying dead in like the next room. So she ended up one of the lucky ones. Here on Carlton Hill, this was the location of Carlton Jail. The jail no longer stands, it was torn down, but this is where Burke was held before his execution. Now, of course, like with every murderous duo, there has to have a rift somewhere in the partnership, right? So Burke started thinking that Hare was cutting him out of the deals and keeping some of the money for the victims and wasn't getting paid. So Halloween of 1828, this is basically where the crap hit the fan. So there was a last victim. Her name was Marjorie. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. I think it's Dorchery, not really sure. Anyway, she was invited to stay at Burke's house. And there was another couple there that were lodgers. Their names James and Ann Gray. They were going to stay at Hare's lodging house so that the murder of Marjorie could take place. So whenever the couple returned to Burke's lodgings the next day, they were told that basically they asked Marjorie to leave because she was trying to get her flirt on with Burke. When in reality, they had murdered her. So the couple became suspicious because they weren't allowed in the spare room where they had left some belongings. And so they basically found Marjorie's body hidden beneath the bed, and at that point, Helen, Burke's woman, offered them a bribe to basically not say anything about it. Okay, but you know, they were like, we're not taking the bribe, and went to the police, and word got out to Burke and Hare that they had went to the police, and so by the time the police had made it there, the body was gone. It was already with Dr. Knox and sold and all that. But needless to say, the four of them, Burke, Hare, and their women, were arrested, had conflicting stories, and taken to court. All right, much like the movie Scream, you know, where Jamie Kennedy in the end is like, there are certain rules for a horror movie.
Yeah, that you gotta follow.
Okay, well, much like that, Burke and Hare had their own set of rules when it came to who they would pick as their victims. They had 5 rules they had to abide by.
Okay.
What do you think they were?
Number 1, I think would have to be it's got to be somebody that nobody's gonna miss.
Perfect, that's number 1.
I got it. Rule number 1. Number 2 be, well, I guess no, nobody with family that fall in the same category. Certain age,
Kind of.
gender.
No, think along the lines of frailty.
Oh, somebody wouldn't put up a fight.
Somebody weak. And it also kind of goes along with a third one, don't pick somebody strong. So that's 3.
Well, yeah, because you don't want somebody that can put up a fight, because that's just going to make it harder to get them, and means you're probably going to end up having to, like, you know, smack them around versus, and then that's going to bruise the body or cut it or whatever. Okay.
Okay, the next one is choose somebody who was poor.
Right.
Kind of goes along with they
The
wouldn't
first
be
one.
missed.
Yeah.
Well, the first and the second one are kind of similar. So they would pick somebody that was not known in Edinburgh. And then the last one of their rules was pick somebody that nobody would ever come looking for.
Right.
So, you know, 2 of their rules, like the weak and not strong, kind of go hand in hand. Not known in Edinburgh and, you know, somebody nobody would come look for, kind of go together.
Yeah.
But in essence, they had those 5 rules. And by the time their murder spree ended, they had killed 16 people.
Dang.
And it got to a point where they were becoming more and more greedy. And like, for example, one of their victims was an elderly woman and a disabled child. Versus doing the Burking method, it said that the child was, I think, thrown over the knee or something, neck or back was broke or something like that.
Right.
So the more they went along,
They start getting more sloppy.
yes. After the police, you know, arrested them, of course, this led their investigation to Dr. Knox, which would be, you know, what you would think. So the couple that was staying there identified Marjorie's body, and sometimes later, you remember Janet, the one that had left her friend and come back.
Mm-hmm.
So she had identified the clothes to Mary Patterson. But there was little that the police could use to tie this evidence to Burke and Hare. So basically they went to Hare and they were like, look, we'll offer you immunity if you testify against Burke. So what do you think he did?
Started squealing like a pig. Like a rat jumping from a sinking
did.
ship.
He did. So this is where the trial took place, and it actually took place on Christmas Eve. And their, what do you call it? Their decision was made the next day.
Their verdict?
Yeah, their verdict was made the next day.
Well, that moves swiftly.
Including them accusing and taking Burke to trial, they also took Helen, also, you know, his woman that helped him along with all of his mischievousnesses. But under Scottish law, there was no way to prove her guilty. So she was kind of set free. So Burke was the only one found guilty, and he was sentenced to death to be hung. So,
poor Burke. Everybody else got to go, and that sucker just got the short end of that deal.
He did. He took it for the team. He went down for the team.
He did get a freaking way to murder somebody named after him.
Burkin.
Yeah. So I guess in the end it was a slight win.
All right, so our next spot, we're gonna take you to where he was hung. We paused this gruesome tale of Burke and Hare to offer you some roadside entertainment. We are at the Lawn Market Gallows, across from a statue of David Hume. So if you'll notice these 3 gold bricks make an H, this was actually the site of where Burke was executed.
An H. I was making an I.
So his execution took place on January 28th, 1829, in front of a crowd of around 25,000 people, screaming and happy for the end of Burke. So after he was hung, what do you think happened to his body?
He was left there? No.
What were they doing with their bodies?
Oh, they gave it to science.
Gave it to science. And you can still find artifacts of Burke's body here. There's actually something made out of his skin.
Around the time that Burke died, Hare escaped to London, where it's believed that he was thrown into like a lime quarry and then lived out the rest of his days as a blind beggar on the street. Nobody really knows that for sure. It's kind of like an urban legend or a conspiracy theory. But either way, either he got off scot-free or he didn't and ended up being blind anyway.
Also, despite his involvement, Knox was actually cleared of anything because he claimed off he didn't know where the bodies were coming from.
Is there someone replacing his feet?
Oh, like somebody was just
The
dropping them
doctor.
off at his,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I went to bed the next morning, the doorbell rang and there was one laying there.
In essence, like back then they could bring bodies to be sold, but he was just like, oh, well, this person just died, and you just happened across their body.
Right.
So it was okay for him to purchase them, but he had to have known some sketchy stuff was going on, because nobody just comes across that many bodies.
Yeah. And especially like in that good condition, like, so you know they weren't grave robbing because the bodies were in too good a shape. You knew they weren't straight out like shooting or stabbing them because they'd come in like no bruises whatsoever. But when you're getting them from all different ages and range, you knew something was up.
All right, so we are here at the National Museum of Scotland, and this is level after level of just history. Lots of people here, but we came here for one particular thing having to do with Burke and Hare. Now, these dolls, there were 17, but 8 survived from the 17, and people speculate that Burke was actually the one that created these coffin dolls because they felt like maybe he felt some kind of remorse for the victims. And so he mimicked these coffin dolls after said victims. Burke was a shoemaker, so they said that he definitely had the ability to create something like this. They're very, very creepy though.
They're very, very tiny.
Yeah, I was expecting like actual like dolls, like baby doll size kind of.
Yeah, me too. That's why we kept passing them. We couldn't find them. We were looking for like porcelain doll size.
But like that one over there on the right, you can see like the little eyes.
Right there. All right, guys, that does it for us on this exit. Hope you enjoyed it as always. We enjoyed making it.
We also got a workout.
Yes, I think we walked all over. We walked to the end of what seemed like Edinburgh because there was no more buildings. But we're tired, but it was fun either way. So catch you guys down the road at the next exit.
Keep it spooky.
Later.